Hello. Now, spoilers ahead for Daredevil Born Again. Muse is a fascinating and terrifying character, and let's be honest, gone too soon. He was almost too simple. It seemed like he was a little bit predictable, but if we take a closer look, we'll see that it reveals things about him that we might have missed. In fact, we're going to look here at the end of this episode today at a work of art of his that I think reveals some stuff that's really very scary and tells us about his motivations. Welcome to Philosophy All Along. I'm a professional philosopher, and I like to use the tools of philosophy to help me understand the things I love on a deeper level, like Daredevil. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, what got me thinking about this was Ryan Arey from Screen Crush and his analysis of Muse. Now, one of the things that he catches that I hadn't noticed that I thought, wow, this is really smart, is that Muse wears an outfit that's made of canvas. Now, Ryan pointed out that that means that Muse might be thinking of himself as a work of art. And I think that that's very smart, all the more reason to check them out at Screen Crush. But I also think he might be wrong. Okay, so follow me here. We have not spent any time at all talking about Muse's name. Now, the name Muse clearly comes directly from the ancient Greeks, right? The ancient Greeks had this idea that there were these goddesses that inspire art. So I think that this guy is thinking of himself as a muse. Now, if that in fact is the case, that means that one of the best ways to understand him isn't just as an artist or even as himself a work of art, but as someone who inspires art, inspires others to produce art. So yes, I do think, and he tells us this, right, that he wants to be seen as an artist and he wants to be able to make art. But I think that there's also this part of him that wants to include others in the making of art. He wants to inspire them. And how does he do that? Well, he literally makes them art. He takes their blood and turns them into works of art. And I think he thinks that he's freeing them. Now, interesting to note also, the Muses didn't have a muse for painting. So there was like a muse for music, for instance, but no muse for painting. The closest might actually be the muse of, wait for it, tragedy, Melpomene. How appropriate would that be if he views himself as going, well, there's no muse for painting. Let me go ahead and act that out. And, well, the closest that there is for my own inspiration is the goddess of tragedy. Well, that would explain an awful lot. Okay, now you might be thinking that's a bit of a stretch, but what's some more evidence? Who does he go to? Heather Glenn, right? So he goes to this psychologist who he thinks has helped him an awful lot. But the fact is they've barely talked. So where is it that he's getting this idea that she's done so much for him? Well, obviously from her book. And what is her book called? Live Without Fear, a guide to confronting trauma. So I think what he believes that she's done for him is she's freed him. He now lives without fear. He gets to be himself. He has, by putting on his mask, taken off his mask and become his true artistic self. So what's happening here is the reason why she is the work of art that he is most excited about. She is also the person that he is most excited about freeing. For him, this has come full circle. She has freed him to become his true self, and now he, as the inspiring, tragic muse, is going to free her to become herself. So now, is there any more evidence to my claim that for this is really about him being a muse and supposedly freeing others to be art and be artists? Yes. So the name of this episode, the title, is Art for Art's Sake. So this idea comes from a guy named Théophile Gautier. So in the 19th century, there are these artists and these thinkers who were kind of rejecting the idea that art is supposed to somehow do something moral or do something for the community that is completely untethered from moral restraints. So that makes perfect sense for someone like Muse, who's not worried about morality, right? He's going around killing people to make his art, and maybe people can't even really understand how brilliant it is. You get the idea. This is art, and it doesn't have to answer to your conventional ideas of morality. But Gautier has some very interesting quotations that I want to share with you. One of them is the idea that the eyes are the window to the soul. Now that, of course, you've heard before multiple times. It's a little bit overdone, but man, does that explain a lot about Muse, right? what does he do? He shows himself as having blood coming out of his eyes, but he also, in his victims, puts out their eyes. So to me, I think what's actually happening here is if the eyes are the window to the soul, well, here's a problem. The window is preventing the spirit from being free. If you want to be a free spirit, you have to break the window. So he puts out the eyes, the blood comes out, and that enables these people to be free as art, to be free as artists. The spirit is now freed. Now, this is even further evidenced by another quotation from Gaultier, where he says, "A true artist paints with his heart." Well, what does Muse paint with? With the heart's blood. And you even see that on his uniform, right? On his canvas uniform, you see on his chest, right? That there's this blood spattering. So to me, this makes his chest not just canvas, but also a palette, right? Now he is painting with his own blood. We see him do this when he's in Glenn's office, right? Where he sketches with the blood that's coming from his nose, but he also then facilitates from his crazy perspective. He facilitates from this perspective of freeing other people to paint with their heart's blood. Now, I think the way that this really comes out, the evidence for this is in a work of art that he provides us with. Okay, so let's take a close look at this work of art just real quickly. Number one, I think that this is probably the best piece to understand Muse as Muse because it literally calls itself self-E, right? So it is a self-E, and he's playing with the word self-E here, changing it to a Y, which also makes it a bit of a question, and I think that there's an answer to why I'm being this self. Okay, so you'll notice a couple of things that are, I think, really obvious. You have, in theory, Muse in the center, and we'll come back to that in a second. But on both sides of Muse, you see what looks like cutouts from a dollar bill and cutouts from hell, right? You see these flames. But most importantly, in my reading of this, you'll notice that they're not just cutouts in general, they're actually cutouts from each other, right? They are mirrored. So this dollar bill, it seems to me that what happens is when you cut the dollar bill, when you cut it out, what you see behind it, what you see as foundational to it, the secret that Muse is revealing is that it is hellacious, right? That the flames of perdition are there motivating things like capitalist greed, which we see him comment on previously in other works of art, particularly by coming after Fisk and making note of things like the bull that's representative of the stock market. So a lot of this is an artist trying to say like, oh, money is the root of evil, I think, here. Now, if they are in cutouts, then the very fact that Muse here is missing, right? It looks like he is also a cutout. Well, then that means he has been freed, perhaps freed from the bonds of capitalism, right? The need and want for money, but also freed from the hell of not being able to be himself, probably based on like, oh, I have to have money to meet these needs. Notice he's basically a poor artist somehow, right? While he's still able to buy this super expensive canvas, but he's not making money off of it. So this, I think, is even further evidenced by the fact that you see him as the Statue of Liberty. Now, for some reading, that might mean that he views himself as a freer, not just as he's trying to use his work of art to free their minds. I think he is freeing them to also become artists. This idea that, oh, I know the secret to being able to be your true self, and you should also do this. And then what do we see the Statue of Liberty / Muse holding? We see handcuffs. Now, this is both then representative of him unlocking us, right? Taking us out of bondage, taking the viewer out of bondage, but also handcuffs that perhaps were binding him. So I was bound, I'm no longer bound, I am free, I am escaped from this, right? I have been cut out from it. And what is the only thing then that's left behind? The blood, right? The blood of the the two victims of this particular painting, and that is now what is left constructing him, right? That is his imprint there and theirs. And so, in my view, Muse views himself as inseparable, not just from the works of art, but inseparable from his victims, that he is now connected to them, that they have become free spirits together in the construction of art, which is why at the end of the episode, he has this gun, which perhaps is so that he can force Glenn to do what he wants, but also notice he's putting down canvas, and they make mention of this idea that he's going to engage in some sort of murder suicide. If that's the case, well, then that suggests that his final concept of a work of art isn't just using Glenn and killing her to produce art, but that he's also going to end his own life. And so then they are both, from his wackadoodle perspective, free, totally free as artists. He might have even been planning to combine their blood together on that final canvas. Okay, so if you enjoyed this, please comment. If there's something I missed or something that you want to add to it, please put it in the comments. I would love to hear it. Love to talk with you all. If you liked it, please please subscribe. It means a lot to me. And share it with other people. Let them know to watch as well. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day.